Welcome to No Fluff, Just Ideas. This is your host, Sophocles, and we're going to be discussing investment ideas from around the world. So buckle up and enjoy. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Full disclaimer at the end of the podcast. Well, welcome everyone to today's show. We have Antonio Velardo. Antonio is the CIO and head of a family office. He was going to join us in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh, for our second Asia event, but due to the circumstances with the war, he wasn't able to make it. But I thought his idea was really interesting. And so I reached out to Antonio and say, hey, would you like to talk about the specific company on the podcast? And he was very, very generous to do so. There's also some slides which he had prepared for the event, but wasn't able to make it. So we'll show those slides as well in the next couple of minutes. And so if this will be on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but I think through Spotify and YouTube, you'll be able to see the slides as well. Antonio, thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
So you missed Vietnam. Maybe you'll join us in Brazil in June or in Cyprus in September. So those of you listening, do check out. We do have a Brazil event coming up, which should be a lot of fun. I actually just booked my airplane tickets. So Antonio, what is the company?
Okay, so the company is eToro. Most of you probably know it. It's kind of famous. The ticker is ETOR. The company, it was founded in 2007 by two brothers, Yoni and Ronen Asia, and their partner David Ring. So the vision was to make investment accessible to everybody, not only to financial advisors or people that had the Bloomberg terminal, but to basically to retailers and to everybody who want to trade. The company, it's basically now is a crypto and stock broker. It's a super app. Now I'm going to explain details what it does, but is more than 40 million people enrolled, registering in the company. It's got 3.8 million of funded accounts, and it goes through 140 countries. The company is interesting because it actually just did its IPO in May 2025. Now, just not even 1 year ago, and started from $52. It went up to 69, I think, during the first few days, and then now it came down to basically between $29 to $30 as we speak. So it's interesting as well because of the valuation. We're going to go through that. But basically, it's a company which is 2.5 billion market cap. It's got a net cash of 1 billion 20. Very interesting. And it goes for EBITDA 5.2, 5.3 versus its peers that, for example, like Wood or Webull, which are 25 or 30 times. And even its European peers like Plus 500 or IG that goes for 8 to 9 times. And probably eToro is we can argue that it probably is a better platform than some, at least some of the European ones. It goes for much higher multiple. Now, what does it do? Just to go into details. So you can do, you can buy stocks like, I don't know, Tesla, Apple, stocks you like. There's many stocks available through 25 stocks exchange. You can buy crypto. You can buy more than 110 tokens, much more than Hood. In Hood, you can only buy 30, for example. You can have your own crypto wallet and custodial crypto wallet where you can actually move the money from your platform to the wallet directly, and then you can use the wallet, to do operation, to DeFi, to stake, for example, the crypto, things that very rarely you can do through these platforms. Then you have your kind of neo banking, features where you can have your card, your Visa card, you can have your cashback, you can have interest on your money. You also have subscriptions to sort of like special program that gives you more information about stocks and things like that, and you have access to smart portfolio. Smart portfolio are diversified investment strategy that are built with BlackRock, for example, or Templeton and Amundi. Okay, but the most important feature, the most important of all of them, and one of the thing we're going to argue probably is a moat, is the copy trading. They've been doing copy trading. They were probably the first one to copy trading. They've been doing for 15 years, and copy trading means they have roughly about 5,000 professional, I mean, popular eToro um, portfolio manager. You can actually look at their track record. You can see which one you like most. You can pick, a guy that maybe has 15, 20% CAGR in the last 10 years. You can understand what kind of risk there is, or volatility on the portfolio. And even if you do not know nothing about it, you can just click and join. And from $500 onwards, you can actually, copy the portfolio. And that will be done all automatically. And that's very interesting. There's something that is very hard to build, and they did it. And it's one of the special features. On top of that, you have also a network of sort of like social network. So you actually similar to Twitter, but more organized, and you can actually go and comment about stocks. You can do conference. You can actually do webinars. The portfolio manager itself can answer questions. You can deal with other people. The difference between Twitter, for example, this one is that on Twitter you can come up and say, I like the stock, or I thought it was good. There, you actually can say that, but they can see your profile and see if you actually bought the stock, how much what position you had on that, and what was your track record. So, kind of like, you can actually show what you do, and you can put your money where your mouth is, and share with others your vision. And that's interesting. On top of that, and it's probably the last one for now, it's they have, beside the currency conversion things, they have an EI assistant now. It's called Tori. And so within the platform, you can actually speak to Tori, ask what he thinks about the portfolio, ask opinion, maybe understand about the risk. Yeah, probably things you can do also with UI, EI now, but that can be automatically done. And now what they're doing EI agent portfolio. You can actually connect an agent to your portfolio, and you can actually do the operation within your account automatically. And that's very, very interesting. Actually, those have been designed now as we speak. For example, and Yoni was saying in one of the last speech with CNBC that he's doing ad persona portfolio, like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger type, Lilu. Think about it, and you think you can have this ad persona type of portfolio behavior, where you can actually say, give an opinion about your portfolio, actually act as a portfolio manager, through an agent, EI agent. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
actually, I've seen samples of that actually because eToro actually sponsors my Cyprus conference, and they invited me to the summit they had, and they did show these AI whatever agent programs, and someone did program or teach the AI Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch and all these other gurus, and so his tool was you could have each guru give you comments
Yes.
on your portfolio. So actually, some of those I thought were gimmicky, but some of them were actually pretty cool. Those tools, and I don't think anyone is doing anything like that yet.
No, and they're doing it. I mean, they're using the developers. I mean, they're not actually hiring it. They're using the flow of people, the network. So the network does a bit like Apple of like Ether, for example. They do their own app, and then you can connect it to the API of eToro, and then automatically the you can actually move your portfolio within your allocation that you give to that particular agent or that particular portfolio manager. That's kind of interesting. And
Mm.
yeah, and the kind of clients they have, the retailers and things, they will enjoy that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I actually even tried the Tory AI. It's okay, to be honest. I wasn't really that impressed. What I like about what they're doing with the copy traders is that the company's actually trying to get them to become better. And what do I mean by that is, like, in order to have a certain assets under copy, you have to have certain certifications. Like if you're a CFA charter holder, you qualify. But if you don't have the CFA, then there's different other options and exams that you actually have to do. And I think that's very good, because that way, the copy traders educate themselves, and it rather than at the end of the day, whoever copies them has a better chance, probability wise, that they're investing in someone who knows something and just did not get lucky, let's say, right?
Absolutely.
I didn't know actually that you could buy crypto and then transfer it to your wallet. So you can buy Ethereum then on eToro and then transfer it to your wallet on the blockchain.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing. We were using it for that one. Was I think it's something that you cannot do with other platform. You can do probably, of course, with because if you do with you can do with Kraken or maybe with Coinbase, but those ones are just pure crypto, so you cannot buy stocks with that. But in eToro, you can use it. You can have your own sort of like bank account, right, with eToro, and you can transfer to your crypto wallet, and then with your crypto wallet you can do DeFi operations, so you can actually spend the money in crypto in as you want, or just transfer and change them in the crypto ATM. That's very interesting. That's now it's getting more. Now it's getting more, but before was one of the few companies you could do that with. That's
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, especially for the digital native, for all the young guys. They really like that. Also, people want to have their own ether rather than maybe have that on the platform and things like that. So that's interesting.
I know they have this debit card, like I said, but do they also have a credit card?
Debit card. I think it's a no, no. It's a debit card. Yeah, it's a Visa debit card.
Yeah, and they initially had the eToro platform and e-money platform, which was separate, and now they're merging it, or they merged it. They merged it, from what I
They merged it.
understand. Yeah, yeah. Well, the one thing I've noticed with them and talking to some of their people is they're trying to do a lot of stuff at the same time.
I think it's a bit, if you want to look, it's a bit like maybe a Revolut, but with the different kind of more in considering on the trading. But you can leave the money there, get an interest. You can spend the money if you want, move it to crypto. That's what they want to do. In 20, I mean, in the next, I was reading a research, I think Goldman or some of those that said there is in the next 20 years 125 trillion of wealth, which is more than two times the money of the entire stock market in the States. That is actually a transfer of wealth from the baby boomer to the millennials, Gen Z, that is going to be being transferred in the next 20 years. And these people, I mean, the new guys, the younger guys and things, they're really used to gaming with money. They like to have some crypto, to buy some stocks, follow people on Twitter or whatever, on eToro and gaming. So they more different. They be different. They're not the kind of guy that probably, at least for now, they're not gonna sit down in front of I don't know, JP Morgan, portfolio
Yeah,
wealth
yeah,
manager, and listen how to maybe do a normal transaction like probably some of us do now.
yeah,
So they're
yeah,
more like there's more gaming into this, and they want to pop into this in this area. There is if you think about 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have access to all this information, to all those data. So it was very difficult to trade. When I started to trade it, I was very young, I was 18, but there was only one or two platforms. It was very difficult. You need to get information, on the papers. I mean, it was impossible. Now it's more democratized. So people, is developing a lot this type of behavior, this type of, attitude towards money. There's a lot of podcasts. People want to learn. They want to learn how to trade, how to become wealthy, independent, and things like that through the trade and through the investing.
yeah. It's improved a lot. There's a lot of negatives though too. I think
Absolutely.
there's probably way too many podcasts and YouTubers who give a lot of bad advice. Actually, I remember when eToro started some years ago. I think they had like 50 stocks, and I was
Yeah,
like,
now there are many,
yeah,
many more. Of course, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That
yeah,
was one of the
yeah,
things that like. I mean, for us, that probably we trade on Interactive Broker or Charles Schwab,
yes,
but it doesn't really make sense. But
yes,
it's the copy trading is fine. There is one app which was done by a developer, which was a one popular investor, but he was also a developer living in Malta. I think it's called Mario Pardo. He's a Spanish guy. He did an app called, which I think is very interesting to look at. I think it's called Bullaware, and there is all the informations of any user of eToro, and you can go there and check all type of metrics you can think of, from the Sortino ratio to the P of the portfolio, the area of investing, all the track records. I think it's kind of interesting. You can look at the best popular investors from the best to the least, the ranking, how they're going. I mean, it's very interesting. It actually, I think he sold the app to eToro. So it shows that it's a community. It's a community that actually acts from outside and then get involved with eToro. A bit like the Ether community, or maybe I don't know, like Apple, that they say, okay, do the app, and then you can go and put it on our Apple store and then monetize, something like that. And I think is what he's trying to do is also trying to do that with DI and DI agent type of thing, because it's not
mm,
actually hiring engineering to do the apps, but it's actually letting the developer do it and then connect it to the API. I think that can also have a sort of flywheel effect, more positive for the growth in the future.
yeah, yeah.
the company's been growing a lot. It's in the last 9 consecutive months. It's been the funded accounts been growing a lot. Now you went to three, almost 4 million of funded accounts. It's been growing quarter by quarter.
It's probably also, though, because they, if I'm not mistaken, they also give leverage.
They give leverage, yes. The regulation changed a bit. Before they could give more, then they changed it to, I think, maximum 30 times. Still a lot, and it was 200, I think. But yes, they give leverage as well. Yeah, I think the leverage crypto segment is one of the crypto where they make also good money. Is a good part of the revenue. Yeah.
The order types are very limited on eToro. I mean, there's lots of stuff there, but that's probably one area I would say they probably need to work on. But I can't see why they can't get there over time. And like you said, I think there is this advantage to the whole social platform, copy traders, and someone could say, well, big deal, anyone can copy that, but I don't think anyone will. Why would, for example, IB or any of the other guys even bother?
No, IB is a different kind. I should say different kind
Yeah.
of market. Family office, professional people, and probably even us. I mean, you would not use eToro if not just eventually to do maybe popular investing, just to challenge ourselves and try to compete with others, or maybe for reputation purposes. Maybe just go there and talk about the stocks and then show our portfolio. That could be one of the reasons. But really, the market is for somebody else. It's for the retailer that is new to investing, opened account, maybe he's just starting to work, he's a young guy, he wants to do a bit of crypto, a bit of there, and maybe does not want to get involved too much, but just want to go and copy someone that has a good track record.
Yeah.
Just go there, and that's very interesting.
And some of these guys I've met some of these guys. They have, some of them have good track records. Some of
Very
them,
good.
And no one knows them. And just talking to them, I can see some of these guys are just really passionate about learning and proving. And in a way, it's a revolution for the small guy who doesn't have access, right?
Yes.
Because if you grow up in a big market, let's say like the US or somewhere in Europe, and you go to the right school and you'll work at the right financial institution, doors open for you, you eventually manage money, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're some guy, what am I going to say, what's his name, the Mauritius, have you met Ishfaq? Such a nice guy, right? And he's so passionate. The guy's like studied physics in Russia, right? His passion is like stocks, and now he's he has some people copying him. And I see he pitched a stock in Asia last year, and he did a really good job. I was impressed, very impressed. Now a guy like this would, there's no chance he would be able to enter financial services in any other way. But now he's got a platform, and it's so financially it works well for a small portfolio manager, because as you know, due to regulation, unless you have 30 million, you can't do anything in Europe.
Right. And
Because
also the fees are very high. The
exactly,
fee, it is the 220 plus maybe some other fee to enter. Plus, it's impossible for the small retailer to be able to access this kind of
yes.
and now you can actually not only copy basically almost for free just portfolio manager, but what you can do, you can actually talk to him, ask questions, or maybe listen why enter a position, why exit a position, so you can actually actively participate to the investment journey that the guy is actually doing with your money. Even just if you had $1,000 into the portfolio, things that would be impossible to before. So I think it's really, really interesting. And that's something that you cannot copy that easily. I mean, Robinhood has got only 1% penetration, and he tried to copy eToro. I mean, you cannot copy the copy trading things, for the game of words. But it's been 15. You have 15 years of track record. So I mean, if you just want to put something on eToro, on Robinhood or Webull or any other thing, I mean, you who are you gonna follow? I mean, you have a community. You have all the track records. You can check what they did, how did they behave, how did they go during the COVID. What was the maximum down drawdown during crisis, things like that, right? You cannot do that here. You can talk to them. I mean, this is very hard to copy. That's I think this is small mode here, and that's something that's very, very valuable.
And there are some professionals actually that do have copy trader accounts. Like I met someone who is or was at Morgan Stanley, someone else who's at a trading desk, So it's not only just a bunch of, guys who didn't have access. There are also people who were in the industry or are in the industry, and it's kind of like a hobby. They're putting their like portfolios
Yeah, I
up
mean,
there.
yeah. If you see this guy that are really good, you see a guy that did 25% CAC for the last 10 years, hey, you know what, I'm going to put some money to that guy. Why not? It might be a talent, and some of them are, to be honest, is a good job. And also some, we probably just fund an account just to follow them, like to see what they buy, why
Exactly.
they buying this, they've been good, why they buying this one, things like that, or understand what they're trying to do. And yeah, and so, yes, absolutely. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
You cannot do that with other platforms.
I guess the majority of people there, they're trying for maximum gain, right? So
Yeah, the retailer, yes, but the ones that do the popular investors, not all of them. Some of them are very, very low risk profile. You can actually see there's like a grade of risk done in a very simple way. Yeah, and you can check. Okay, I want to just a guy that does three, where the volatility standard deviation is very, very low. There's people with standard deviations really low, like very, very low, and you can actually choose them. Maybe they have, of course, sometimes in big upside, much lower return, absolutely, but you can choose them. Or you can actually select your portfolio in a way where you say, okay, I'm going to put a portion to a very crazy guy that can give me 20%, I lose all my money, and then I can put this one, the biggest part, on the guy that, and that was, which is interesting as well.
I'm just like, now that you're saying this, you're triggering my memory here, and you're 100% right. So there are the crazy guy. Well, let's just say, not call them crazy, the risk takers, right?
Yes.
That have like 90%, 99% of their portfolio in crypto, or like some of the guys like to call them all the shit coins, and they have wild returns, both up and down.
Yeah, in bull market, they have crazy returns, absolutely.
And then you've got some guys who are like portfolio of ETFs, low risk ETFs, and it's kind of like, they're it's tick 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 tick. It's making some money there without, with low risk. So it's, yeah. Now I have to agree. There's a quite large variety.
Well, what they do is, you know they work differently from for example, from Robinhood, right? Because Robinhood can do PFOF, which is per flow order, right? Here,
Mm-hmm.
because they grew up in Europe, they have 70% of the market now in Europe. Those is part of some country going to ban those in 2026, now in few months, and some others have already banned it because it's against regulation. Because the way it works is that as a broker, you should find the cheapest solution for the client. But if you do through PFOF, actually PFOF, they're gonna find, they can get you the best deal for them, so that you make more money. And so it's not, and then to get the data from your clients, because of course retailers that are used, for eventually trading against them, or see what they're going to trade against them, and make money in that way. But what they do, they work on spread, and this is the working on spread things that makes an accounting trigger, gap accounting measure trigger, that actually makes them they make them not really easy to find them on the screener. Because and this is what part of this is if you try to look at financial income statement of eToro, you look at margin for you look at revenue of 13-14 billion, for example, last year, with a margin of 1%. So and you look at maybe negative operating margin for a few years. So it looks like it's a spark lost more than 50% with 1% margin. You say, this must be a crap company. But the truth is different. The reason why they have this, because there is a regulation in the gap accounting, that if you are the principal, okay, if you're the principal for the regulation called ASC 606, you need to record the full revenue. So let's say, for example, you want to buy $20,000 in Bitcoin with eToro, and what they do, you buy this 20,000. The cost, I mean, they buy for 19,800. So and they make $200 revenue on that. But they're gonna, because they are the principal, they now they put the full 20,000 as a revenue, and that's what the problem is. But the truth is, the only 200 is the only money that you really look at, and that's why they invented the term called, and actually you asked me the term by email, I remember, the net contribution. They make their own term, they
Yeah,
made their own metric called net contribution to
yeah, yeah.
actually come up. Yeah. But
I
that's
mean, that's
important because in
fine.
the screener
That's
you don't
that's
see that.
fine. I mean, I think professional investors with sites they're gonna see through that. I think they'll see through that. I mean, it's more like for smaller investors who are just screening and not really looking at the details. But I think that's a big enough thing where people I think will figure that out. I mean, most professionals will figure that out. Is the net contribution ever negative?
No, cannot be.
Okay,
Yeah, because it's basically the revenue. Net contribution is the total revenue and income minus the cost of the cryptocurrency
exactly.
that they put minus the interest margin interest that they pay.
So
So
they're
yeah,
always making a spread. They're also making a tiny spread. But
yes,
yeah.
yes.
But the spread is it's but they haven't have they said, what kind of spread they're making? Have you seen anything on that? I'm just
You know what? Yeah, this is the thing, right? Because the spread, they make money in different way. So the net contribution is not only the spread, but it's the spread. Then there is the subscription, for example, that you pay on eToro. There is the net interest margin that they make from the cash that they deposit. They have, I think, 17 billion, of which 8 billion are cash, on which they make interest on. They also make money from the neo banking. They make a lot of money from the neo banking for with the card and things like that.
how do they make money though on that? How do they make money on the card? I mean, they send you the card for free.
But no, I think there is few things like when you are in the banking from the currency conversions, you know, yeah, things
Okay.
like that, and some other services in the banking transactions, maybe when you use the card and things like that. So they do make some money there. They also make money from some special subscriptions that you
What
do, and from the
subscriptions do they
portfolio.
have? What subscriptions do they have
eToro,
subscriptions?
they have a special eToro subscription, maybe for special like extra informations and things like that within the platform, extra things that you want to access, extra services or informations, things like that. It's not, yeah, it's not much money, but it is growing that segment as well. Yeah, and then from the smart portfolio, the smart portfolio they make money from that as well. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I mean, I noticed they have these relationships. I actually met one of the guys. I can't remember which company, which actually run one of the smart portfolios from them, and they have some very big companies who are doing
oh
those.
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Blackstone,
yeah, yeah. Templeton. Yeah, I think I met something from someone from Franklin Templeton, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he said to me, "Oh, we're running the smart portfolio." I was like, "Oh, okay. I didn't know that." Yeah, yeah. I thought that was
yeah, because
interesting
these
too.
people are now young guys, and one day they will be old, and they will inherit more money. So now, of course, some of them have a very low amount in the account, so it's not interesting. But one day they eventually can grow it, and maybe they leave the money there.
Have you
That's the purpose.
estimated though, like if you go and buy a stock on eToro, what is eToro making? Like five
Okay,
basis
so
points, or like
they don't. This is part of the thesis, and this is part of the bear thesis as well. From the people that actually are not positioned on the stock. The spread is different, and they don't disclose the spread for each area. So, for example,
Mhm.
of course, they make more money on the crypto. On the crypto, they make more money. They probably is the area where they make more money, and that's why the stock is not suffering because, of course, we are going in the winter, in the bear market of the crypto.
Mm-hmm.
But probably on the there's also spread on the equity. There's on the commodities because you can buy commodities and on the leverage. So they make money. They don't disclose each segment. What we know for sure is that one of the segment that it's suffering is the crypto, and the crypto is where they actually make probably more money. Yeah. So actually, the crypto segment is out of 868 million. I think it's about a couple hundred million is from the crypto segment, together with the crypto part, buying and selling crypto, and the leverage part, okay, which is also quite big. But in the recent 3 or 4 quarter, even with the crypto market going down, I think that the net contribution, so let's call it the way they call it, went down from 25 to 19%, but the overall margin only dropped to 1%. So probably it's not that bad. They're either growing or they're increasing in other area a bit the commissions, or probably it's not that bad as for example Goldman thinks.
Should we run through your your
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
slides? Let me
Sure.
just share that video screen. Let's go and okay. Can you see it? the slides?
Yes, yes,
All right, you can just tell me, and I can just
yeah. So we covered
go
yeah,
through them. Yep, there we go. Oops. So yeah,
yeah.
here's
So
the
this is basically
platform.
the platform that we spoke about. So we spoke about the AI, the eToro money, the crypto trading part, the copy trading, the smart portfolio, all the company information. So that one I think was covered. I don't know if you wish we could go on and
Nuts.
maybe go into the
Okay.
unless you want to go deeper into that part. But um,
Well,
yeah,
they
this
don't
is the
have. Yeah, they don't have wealth management yet, from what I understand. Is there?
the wealth management can they don't have kind of like they working on the tori, so tori the like di, and then you can look at maybe the wealth manager can be interpreted as also as this is from their slide. Actually the slides is
Okay.
from their presentations, right? So I think they can interpret it also as the portfolio ei that you can choose by different area, or maybe you can choose different approach to the portfolio if you want to more aggressive, less aggressive, and then just go there. I think 127 sorry portfolio through those asset management company, like Amundi and the one we spoke about. So I think it can look at through that way as a wealth management. Yeah, and a bit also I think the copy trading can be interpreted like that. So yeah, on here the thesis of the was the accounting distortion, which of course, if you go and look in details, you probably come this way. But in the screener, if you use a automatic screener, probably as a quant or in a screener, probably this company won't pop up. Now, one of the thing is also is that the one of the let's see why there is an opportunity as well, right? What the bear are saying, I think one of the issue is the one of the crypto winter, the fact that most of the revenue that probably is more profitable for them comes from the crypto, right? What we did, we tried to sort of like did this analysis, sort of like modeling of what's going to happen if the crypto revenue goes down 30%, 40%, or maybe 70%. And we come up with an idea that probably even if that one goes down and if the margin does contract, the stock at this price is still undervalued. And so we happy about that one. Then we're going to show that eventually, for on why and the numbers. And the other thing that I think it's also interesting is the the for example, if you look at uh, Hood and what Goldman would say. I think Goldman did a report and actually lowered the price of was it sell report, if I remember correctly, a few months ago on eToro. And their things was, if you look at the on the net contribution, if you go on the cost side of it, right, you're gonna see that they spent a couple hundred million, 220 million, 260 million, something like that, over 868 for marketing. Okay, and what they're arguing is that the cost per acquisition per client is much higher than the other ones. For example, if you compare it to Hood or to Webull, Hood spent only $200 per client, and Webull only $333 per client. If you look at how much did for the year, for example, there was increase in funded account, and how much was the cost of marketing, right? And in this case of eToro was 608, so it was like three times Wood and probably two times Webull, right? And and so they're saying that if you need to spend that kind of money to get the client, probably there's something wrong with you, or of course you're less profitable. The thing is that what they're actually missing, and what we're trying to by looking at more carefully, what we think is that eToro just got the copy trading license in October. It didn't even just start yet. Basically, this is basically almost day one in the States, and their market grew in a very underpenetrated market like Europe, right? So 70% of the clients is in Europe. So it's true that it costs them much more money to get those kind of clients, but those kind of clients are much more valuable now than and that one includes also actually the license, right? The license in the place that they got the clients for. Who does not have that? Wood and Webull grew in the States, which is a market where retailers are 25 times more and richer than the one in Europe, right? And there's another thing that is very interesting. If you look only at the CAC cost, they cannot appreciate one thing, that, for example, if you're an American, you on Webull or on Wood, maybe you happy, but in bull market, then in the bear market you just sell, you can close. Switching cost is very very low. You just move it around, and it's easy to open an account somewhere else and leave. But if you have an eToro account, and you are, just because of you like the copy trading, you're not gonna just leave the company. So the long-term value of the client of eToro is much much higher than the one
Mm.
in Hood and Weibo. So you can argue that. So that one is probably one of the lens through you can look at the eToro stock.
Well, I'll tell you, I have an account on eToro, and when it was my birthday, I got free headphones.
Oh wow!
So you don't have an account? There, I got some free headphones. That's why I was messing around here to find them. So, and apparently they send a gift to you. Some people on eToro, and they have a lot of freebies based on your account size. Like you can get the Wall Street Journal for free, the FT for free, and if you have cash, you get like, what is it, 3-4% interest on that cash. So it's not just the ads they are doing. There was one period of time, every time I was doing something on my phone, all I would see was an eToro commercial on Instagram and everywhere, it seems now. But it's not just, they're spending money on that, but they're also spending on money on keeping, their clients. Because if you have an account and you're getting, free Wall Street Journal and free, what is it? The FinChat. There's like another AI thing you get for free if they are spending money, and
Yeah,
yeah. And
all the
what is it?
information as well, the
Yeah,
data.
base 44, right? They've got certain subscriptions from what I know with base 44, and they're
Yeah,
giving
basement
them,
is the agreement for to do that, because it's like a Replit. You can actually vibe
yes,
coding. You can vibe code
yes.
your own app and things. Yeah, absolutely.
So they've had some program, I know, also with base 44, where they're giving some of their, I think, developers or copy traders or something access to develop apps for what they're creating, this marketplace, if I'm not mistaken, where people can then go use these things for their portfolio. Um, but yeah, you're right. They're probably spending more now on those sort of things than what they'll spend in the future. The bigger they get, I'm guessing. Uh, yeah.
They're just now starting to, yeah, they're just starting now to go in the States. So we need to see what's going to happen. I mean, the trick is, of course, there. I mean, the bull case there, if they can crack their market, can penetrate the market, and they actually, grow in the States, they probably can grow at a lower cost of marketing, even faster. Then, the stock's going to, of course, fly. So that's the exam they need to pass. That's a test they need to pass actually to do really well. But on the other side, if they don't do that well, we don't think they deserve this valuation anyway. We think we still undervalued, even if they just grow 3 or 4% a year. So that's our base case is anyway. So
Yeah, it seems to me the biggest the I guess the only thing that would hurt them is a bear market. Volumes drop off, certain clients get wiped out, the guys with $500 leveraging it
right,
2-3
yeah.
times. So when everything was going up, that's great. But if you go into a bear market, a lot of there's going to be weakness in the company.
Yeah,
And
but the
actually,
better clients, the better clients for this purpose of Wood or Webull, or Hood Webull, because for example, on
mhm.
Hood, when the bull market happens, they go with options, they go like the kind of American clients very aggressively. So the revenue jumps 25-30%, but with the eToro, it doesn't. I mean, doesn't jump that much because they have a diversified, net contribution, right? So we think that yes, of course, this is the problem. The problem is the cyclicality, right? That comes with the bear market of the crypto. But we think that I mean, this is a company that is not dead. Is 1 billion plus cash. I mean, even if the EBITDA contract to
Yeah,
200
yeah,
million,
yeah.
for example, it's still very good. They bought $250 million of stocks. 100 the first time, 150 second time, of which 50 accelerated buyback. right? I mean, that's probably 8% of the market cap, right? I mean, and that's really rare that you do buyback. It's this an IPO that just came out like 1 year ago. It's really, really, really difficult to see a new company like that just doing an IPO. So they have a lot of cash, and probably those cash were, they had in mind to do an acquisition, to obviously grow faster and maybe grow a number of users faster, grow from another from another company, and then bring them into the network. And they probably, because they think the stock's so undervalued, they probably prefer to buy their own stock, which is interesting. And that's why I value the skin in the game of the founder, and what he's doing with the money. It also gives a lot of responsibility. We spoke before about the founder, and if you can trust the management, things like that. But for now, even if maybe they are a bit flamboyant in somehow, they're actually very disciplined. They not going to do crazy acquisition, but they actually buying back their own stock, showing that they think it's undervalued. And we
Oh
like that.
yeah.
I like that part. Yeah.
I kind of like that. The buyback, even if they did list.
Now the stock is organized in a way where the family, the Asia family, has they have shares which are worth 10 times the vote of the other ones, of the common ones, and
Okay.
you need 67% to to actually to control the company. So basically, even an acquisition, because you could argue that this company is so cheap that many other companies could just buy. For example, Hood could buy this company. It would be much cheaper to do that than just trying to conquer, fight for the market in Europe, right? But I don't think that's probably possible for now. I mean, unless for the next 2 3 years, eToro does not really struggle and goes really bad, I don't think that Yanni Asia will sell the company. So that's one side of it. I don't know if it's
Oh yeah,
positive or negative, to be honest, but
yeah.
yeah,
I just can't see Yanni selling this. I mean, he's very
no,
passionate. I mean, this is his baby. Very energetic guy. I just don't see it, to be honest. So okay, what else do you have here? Okay, here's what we already talked about. This
yeah.
that the margin, the reported margin is less than the actual, you know, contribution margin there.
And then the next one, I think, yeah, this is the net contribution breakdown. You see, even in crypto winter, even if you see the contribution due to cryptocurrency, it should be the orange one. So I don't see very well through the screen.
Yeah, the
It's
orange is the
even
crypto.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Even if that one is shrinking, the total one is still increasing. So it's pretty positive. And on the margin side, we're not having a collapse or anything like that for now. We had the 1%, I think, less. So we have 30.5, a margin on the net contribution. It's quite good. It's a very good company. So it's a company that shows as quality. Even if you then we're going to speak about more into details of ROI. Can you tell me if you want to go really technical? But even if you look at the return on capital, it looks quite good, and we look at that from different approaches, right? We did the normal one, we did the most sophisticated one. It still looks like the company. We did stress a lot the WACC to make sure that we were kind of like pessimistic on many factors, and we still think it's undervalued from any type
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah,
angle you
so
look at.
it seems here probably maybe part of the pessimism. If you look at Q4 year on year, there's a decline there because of crypto, whereas trading contribution ECC was equities, commodities. Is that what that is? Equities,
Currency,
commodities, currency. Okay, but it's still growing
and they're still
overall.
growing also as a number of funded accounts. So and the one that dropped is the money under administration. It did drop, but the net contribution still stay because they're growing many parts of the income. Like many other parts as well. So probably the banking is helping. The currency is helping. The net interest is helping. So
So
and
the
we
net
did
interest,
yeah.
they're putting the cash into treasuries. What are they putting the cash into?
Yeah, I think that they put in the treasury, absolutely. And there's restriction on that. I didn't really look into what kind of restriction they have, but Israeli company are very they have a lot of restriction on those ones. I remember we had a company as well in the past that I studied that, so they have on treasury.
So I guess they're earning whatever on the cash, and then some of that they pay out to
Yeah, this is the cost. It's the
yeah,
margin interest expense that they have to the
yeah.
clients. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
So
very
that's
high. It's not bad. Now I think out of the 868, if I recall correctly, it was 95 or 98 million they had. So obviously, of course, if eventually interest rate goes down, that this part also will come down. But
yeah,
meantime, they
yeah,
will
yeah,
grow. Yeah, but it will be, if the interest will probably go down, the market will go up again, or eventually Bitcoin as well, or the equity market. So they will get more inflow of clients. So will probably have more money under administration, and probably more transactions on the trading side as well.
yeah, 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 yeah. So funded accounts went up under asset administration year on year up. Net contribution is up. I'm guessing when you said assets under management drop, is that versus the previous quarter?
Yeah, yes, versus the previous quarter. Yes, yes,
Yeah. Still year on year, it's up. So yeah, the numbers look good at 317 adjusted EBITDA.
yeah. Adjusted EBITDA is the measure for the management measure for they basically EBITDA, they add stock based compensation, and they add another thing which is in Israel is sort of like a vested sort of stock compensation for Israeli law and things like that. So yeah, even I think the gap EBITDA is 268 or something like that. It's quite good uh, on that type of revenue. For a company that has that the sort of clean balance sheets, even if they contract to 200 million or 180, 170, I did in the next slides, you can see we did if I recall, we did the sort of modeling, right, of what was going to happen if crypto drops 10 a month of revenue, and even by compressing the margin, and still the company does not look that expensive if it keeps growing like that. Or we did the DCF where actually we grew the company only 15% for the next 5 years, and the terminal we put probably 2 or 3%, if I recall correctly, is in the slide. The company should be, with the WACC of 11.5 or 11.8, and the company is still more than $50. So here is the EBITDA comparison with the other company. Obviously, you can argue that growth, for example, is a very important component of if you look at EV/EBITDA, you should look at growth and payout ratio and cost of capital, right? So you could argue, okay, Webull and Robinhood, of course, they grow 50% compared to 10% of eToro, and they are in a market where probably it's less riskier than the one that eToro is by having 170 countries. So of course they have a lower cost of capital, so they do deserve a higher multiple. But this multiple is much much higher, by the way. And if I agree on that one, you could compare it, for example, to two other platforms. I don't know if you know them, but you might know one is Plus 500 and one is IG. Now I know them because I trade on those platforms. They are really bad. I'm sorry to say that they're really really bad. They don't have nothing. They just have very very few stocks. Some of them don't even have crypto. They don't have a wallet. They don't have the interface. They don't have. Some of them, not, a very very limited leverage as well. They are really archaic, sort of. Like very difficult to trade. Like very like looks technical, but
Really?
it's like it doesn't. Yeah, really bad. Plus 500, for example, it's horror movie. And I don't understand how they're still in business. They don't have any sort of other things. You cannot get information. You cannot get news. You don't have anything about copy trading or anything like that. You cannot even buy crypto on some of them. And then, or you can just buy two stocks, maybe Bitcoin and Ether, but not like all the tokens you can buy. You can buy much less limited amount of stocks, because now the one in eToro before was few stocks. Now they're really increasing a lot the number of stocks they have. They're adding, every day some. And then they go for eight. They grow much less than eToro, and they grow for like eight. Or I don't see the number there, but sorry, it's a bit small for me. But I guess 8.6 or 6.7 against the
Yes.
5.2 or 5.3 of eToro. So I mean, it's interesting. So it's why would they deserve, for example, a better multiple? And that's something that to think about.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
probably because in the market thinks that they less subject to the crypto part. So the crypto revenue, is the one that brings more money in terms of profit, in terms of revenue. But that's why if we move forward, we try to do sort of a scenario. I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's the next slides or the next two slides, where yes, is this one. You see, we lower the revenue from crypto asset, which is the two ones, the crypto asset and the derivatives ones. The derivatives one is quite big, is where they make the money for the leverage. And even though and we lowered, of course, we did something extremely cautiously. We kept the operating cost the same. It's probably, it's going to drop anyway a bit if the revenue drops, but you just keep the same to be pessimistic. And then we dropped, we shrink the EBITDA margin. Even though you see, it's even 70% crypto contribution at 1,000 basis point less than now in EBITDA margin, you still have EBITDA at 9.3 times. So it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And then okay, this is just a calculation of the WACC. We did a calculation of the WACC in a more pessimistic way. We just took inputs from different regions because that's where different regions have, of course, some of them have higher cost of capital. So we did a blended equity risk premium, and we calculated. Usually, I think on Alpha Spread or other portal, the WACC is a bit lower than that. But we just want to be more pessimistic as possible, just to be conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
And then here is a bit technical, but we want to show that whatever way we calculate the ROIC, we actually can show that this company is a quality company, right? And it's a quality company because the the spread between the ROIC and the WACC, it's very high. The return on capital is high. But what we did then, we said, okay, but this company with 1 billion cash. Of course, in the ROIC, you strip the cash out from invested capital. Maybe does not make sense to calculate ROIC that way. Let's do something different. We say, let's see if we do a net an adjusted net asset value. What do you mean for adjusted? It means things that GAAP accounting cannot recatch in the balance sheets, but that has value and is been built in the past. If you think about it, there is 15, this 15, 18 years of work that eToro did. So all the work that has to do with the regulatory licenses, technology platform, the brand, and of course the copyright network. So we did some assumptions of how much those could be worth it. Then if you want to go,
How did you
in
come up with
details,
that? How did you come up with the 675, for example, thousand copy trading network effect?
the 675 million. Yeah, that one is just a calculation of how many years. I mean, it's an assumption, so you can just leave the time, of course, but it's just how many engineer it takes to do that, how much license you need to spend, money to spend in license, how many years will cost an engineer, and for the number of engineers, and more or less the number came up around 675, which is a fair number. I think Robinhood tried to do the same. It didn't really penetrate. So there is a value to that. To that. Now you can argue it's not 675, it's 500 or 400. You can go and make some calculations and argue about that. How much would it cost a license, for example, in another country? License costs 18 months, sometimes 24 months. Cost between 5 to 10 million, depending on the place, on the legal issue that you're gonna have, or the challenge you're gonna have. So all this can be obviously argued, but there is a value to that. And that value is not is not in the capital, is not in the book. So why we did that? We did that to understand. We do usually that because we use a sort of net asset adjusted net asset value of Colombia, right? That is a way that Greenwald, for example, was trying to do a reproduction value, right? So we try to see if I need to reproduce eToro balance sheets, how much I want to spend, right? So in this case, for example, the goodwill and was very low, and there was no intangible. So that there is really a value to all the things I'm saying. So, and why we did that? We did that for two reasons. One, to understand what could be the floor, if you want understand what's the value, but also for something different. How much would it be the ROIC if we calculate the ROIC on this value rather than calculating on the invested capital, which is very low. And we just want to know if that ROIC would be actually bigger than the WACC. And even if it's much tighter, of course, because we come up with a ROIC then of 13 to 14%, it's still higher than the 12, 11%. Of course, it makes sense. It's probably the real ROIC is that one, because otherwise there'll be really a great compounder. But still, there is a thin spread. And then thin spread, if there's a market to be reinvested in, it still can create value.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. I like that. I like that you're trying to figure out
Trying
the
to come
floor
with
and
different
adjust.
scenario, and yeah, and this is the also is a, I mean, it's a way to they use in Colombia. It's called EPV,
Yes.
and is a sustainable earnings. How much, sustainable earnings can have eToro if it doesn't grow anymore? So what's the zero growth value of eToro? Now we had to. There's a little uh, twist there, because of course eToro spends 150 million, sometimes 200, 150 million of R&D, right? Probably this R&D, it's not all growth. But if you consider this another 220 million of sales and marketing, that we didn't put in there, 150 million, if we just take the R&D things and we ignore the sales and marketing, we can say that 150 million is quite conservative, to be honest. So that part, if you add that part to the operative income, okay, because if you actually stop growing, you don't invest more in growth, that part would theoretically be also operative income, right? If you don't spend it. So if you do that, you come up and you do the what to be the NOPAT, sustainable NOPAT, we get a price of 40 for 39, 50, $40. And we actually used a very bad tax rate. The tax rate 22% is very bad. It's conservative. The actual tax rate is 15% now, because they have sort of a special technology platform waiver for some part of the revenue, because they do R&D in Israel, blah blah. But because we don't know what is going to happen with Israel, if Israel is going to probably increase tax after the war, whatever, and because there is also other jurisdiction that they need to pay tax on, we don't know how they're going to grow that other part. We just want to be more negative and say, okay, let's put the top tax again and end up paying roughly 22% just in case. Even that is $40 almost, right? And that $40 is two things. One is higher than the price now, but the most important is higher than the adjusted net asset value. So what it means there is a moat, probably. There's a moat because the earning power value is higher than the asset value. It means, that makes more money than the asset itself. So there is a slight, in a competitive market, you should have the asset value equal to the earning power value. In that case, you have a higher. So there is a small moat there. It's probably no huge, but it's small moat, which it helps to pay even for a premium. And of course, even the sustainable earning value should be higher than the actual price of roughly at 31%, and that's interesting. And yeah, and that's the DCF I was actually speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the another way. We just try to have different approach. Sorry if it's a bit boring, but yeah, we just say,
No, it's
all right, let's
great. It's
see.
great. The more approaches you have, you know, I think everything adds some little bit of value. So catalysts and risks.
Yeah, so basically the catalyst is the USA probably is the biggest catalyst, to be honest. Is they
Yes.
just starting now, October. If they show there is penetration in the market, that's that's a game change, of course, for the valuation as well. You start to to price more growth into it, and start to see the COVID trading is really probably a moat, and you can have a flywheel in the states. That's great. Buyback, as we said, 250 million on this kind of valuation is a lot of money. And there was a 50 million of accelerated one. So that really helps as well. The AI, I think it's interesting because in the next few months and years, it's going to play out really, really nice, with the ad persona things, the gamification of things. I like it. I mean, I would try to use, I don't know, a portfolio with Lilu or Warren Buffett telling me what he thinks about my portfolio, just for fun even, but I'll do that. The Singapore one is interesting, and of course the billion they have cash, can should be used for acquisition. This can be a catalyst, or it can be also be a risk. I think that's why they're very cautious now, and I like it because obviously they're gonna acquire. They depends how much they're gonna pay for it, how they're gonna integrate it, blah blah blah, and the market can get worried about it. But I think that if you bring a lot of users into the network, into the social network of eToro, I can see that eventually if that things get in, it can bring value. On the risk,
On
it's of
the
course, yeah.
US expansion, if I'm not mistaken, they the US clients right now can only copy trade other US clients, and I think the non US copy traders don't have access.
That
Do
one,
you know
to
about
be
that?
honest, I don't. No, that one I don't
Okay.
know. I know that it was opening in October. We can research.
Yeah,
Good
I mean
question actually.
that's something to look at. And then there's the I think they're doing options in the US, but that options is not available in Europe. I actually looked for options, and but I'm in Europe, so I think they don't have. I think they have that off for Europeans.
It's interesting that one because there's a lot of regulation that they're trying to pass through. So it's that one is gonna slow down the of course the American side of it. But there's something to look at. But in Europe, you're right. In Europe, is not retail clients are not possible to buy because there is a MiFID regulations that impose restrictions on the retail investors for options. In USA, eToro uses security as an option trading platform. Yes, so they can do that. And I think that on the questions of the user, if the Google is correct, then you can actually copy because there is for example, a guy called Jeppe Kirk, which is the main one that it can be copied by American account. It's been copied, so you can be copied even if you're
Okay.
European. Don't have to be
Now,
American. So
I
that was a
actually,
good question.
yeah, I
That's good.
just Googled it, and here's where I remember reading about it. There's like you can see it on Reddit. One of the guys says, "I'm trying to copy a friend in Europe, but I can't." And one guy who replies, it says, "Unfortunately, you can't copy anyone in Europe, in the EU, from the US." But this is 6 months old. Okay, this is 6 months old. Um, so I don't know if that's changed.
No, I think you can because there's a news online that says that the Danish guy Kirkebond got 160 million euro only from the USA account, and
Okay.
this guy is from Denmark. So if that news is true, then it means they can do it.
Okay. Um,
Then obviously there is
yeah.
also I guess
There's
there's
lots
some
of
problem in the states
regulation.
also,
Yeah. Yeah.
states as well, different states and and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, regulation is a big deal. It's a very fine line because, it's not by accident that it's assets under administration at the end of the day. Because, anywhere, especially in Europe, you need like licenses, et
Yeah,
cetera, in order to manage
yeah.
money. So, this is
That's
their
why I
way
think for
around
for
that.
for Hood it would be much more difficult
Yes.
to grow now and much more expensive. So, what's going to happen, I think, is that if the bear market will continue, Hood will suffer more than eToro now, right? And so probably shorting Hood and go long eToro could be one. But of course, if yeah, yeah, I mean, if you want to hedge, and if the market come back and crypto goes up, I think Hood is the one that even just because of the flow of money, will go up much more quicker than eToro. Even if eToro will obviously reprice at that stage, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Hood. Did you have Hood here in the multiples? Where is
Yes,
it? Oh,
absolutely. It's
there
the
we
first one, I
go.
think.
There it is, number two. So
The second,
there's
sorry, yeah.
yeah, there's Webull and there's Robin
Yeah,
Hood, and then there's also Plus 500. So I guess you could also, and then there's Freedom, which has I think Eastern Europeans behind it, right?
yeah,
So
and then there is the one China. I think they put the Futu, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I guess one could even do a basket of these versus eToro if they want to hedge part of the risk or just go with the more expensive ones. Yeah, I haven't looked at Webull. That seems to be pretty popular in
It's popular. Yeah, it's
the
similar
US.
to Hood, and it's been growing a lot. It's not very big, to be honest. I mean, it's big market cap, but it's not. I think the revenue is not that big, but they do grow much more than as I said before, than eToro. So the growth is it's much more. It's a different market. So now we need to see. The game is now. Basically, you buy now a possibility to have a new Webull or a new Robinhood bar with copy trading that they didn't have. So
Mhm.
that's the thing. So
So the risks is the crypto concentration you have here, retail flow cyclicality,
I would
regulatory.
I would probably add regulation as well. I think they might have a
Yes.
problem in Australia getting a court in Australia to get to maybe lose a license or limited license. But
Mm.
that one already we even checked the impact should be 20 to 30 million or 30 to 40 million maximum on the net contribution. So it will not be, it will not destroy the company or anything like that. So I think that the strength of the balance sheets, the pessimism of the cyclicality, and the optionality of the buyback that is actually helping the company to reduce the fruit of shares. All those things and the founders in the game, all those things are pretty interesting. It makes risk reward quite appealing.
I've always thought that what's cool with the eToro is they're kind of like YouTube in a way. So it's this is how I've told people at eToro. It's like your copy traders are your influencers, right? And
Yes,
you want to have
yes,
yeah. So your copy traders, they're the influencers. They're driving traffic. They're driving trading, and like Google's making money off of all the influencers
yeah,
essentially and giving something back
yes,
to them.
yeah,
eToro is basically how their copy traders, and like YouTube wants their influencers to succeed, eToro wants their copy traders to succeed. I would say eToro does a much better job at trying to help their copy traders to succeed than YouTube, right? You're a YouTube
oh yeah,
influencer, you get nothing from Alphabet, you
yeah,
get nothing from Google, you get nothing from
yeah.
YouTube
And
except
it's
for
tough.
the
There's a lot of competition. Yeah,
YouTube's. Yeah,
yeah,
all you get is a studio, right? But whereas
true.
with eToro, they're pushing you, they're helping you with the education
Yeah,
side. I know they sponsor
yeah.
some of these
Webinars,
exams.
everything.
Um, so yeah, oh yeah, we've come to the conclusion. Business is moving faster than narrative. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's just a recap of the things
yeah,
we say
good
that.
price, good growth. Yeah, so that's yeah. I mean, let me just stop the sharing. Okay, yeah. Well, it's definitely interesting and it's cheap. It's an Israeli company.
Yes. Yeah, that part I
That's
didn't talk about actually. Yeah. Actually, that I see that as a positive thing because even
okay.
though all that happen in Israel because they have the R&D in Israel, right? So the R&D is all in Israel in the office and things. Even though I mean the they even there was no disruptions. They kept growing. They kept growing the fund accounting. They kept growth. So I think it's good. I don't think that really matters. And yeah, I think it's not perceived as a risk as well. Also, in some of the sales side report, I never saw anything that was mentioning negatively that part. You know, yeah, you could maybe just give it a bit of risk on that side, but that's why with the kind of work we use, I think we cover for all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they have some engineers in Israel, and the R&D part is actually in Israel. Yes, so that can be. But I don't think there is any for now. I don't think that priced in. By the way, I mean I don't think there's any reason. Yeah, I think the market is concentrating on the crypto part.
And I think Yoni's in Cyprus, right? I mean, he's got a house I know in Cyprus, so
They have a like they do have an headquarter in Cyprus as well. If you open an account from Europe, you actually yeah
I think actually I think they're
the
regulated by the
yeah
local
the Cyprus
SEC.
yeah. If you are in Malta, for example, like me, you open in Cyprus. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean the account is the headquarter in Cyprus for the people in Malta. I think it's different from whatever jurisdiction you are probably open.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of stuff on the company. It's interesting. You showed here that your DCF is much higher, your earnings power is much higher. Adjusting for a no growth scenario, reasonably priced, lots of cash, buyback happening. How can you not like that? Have they said anything about a dividend?
No, no, I did not mention. It's on the growth mode. I'll much better prefer, to be honest, the buyback than a dividend.
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. You have to pay tax.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's still in the growth trajectory. So I think it's yeah, and probably they want to keep the cash for some acquisition, I guess, because I think that could be a risk, to be honest. If the acquisition
Mhm.
does not get interpreted well from the market, they probably can bring. So I think they're going to just stabilize the stock price first, and then eventually try to acquire. Because it looks like they care about the stock price. It looks like it's something they care about. It's not. I mean, this type of manager, they don't care. They just want to do their own work and do well. And if you believe in the company trajectory, then you buy. But I think Asia is kind of guy that cares a lot about the stock price, either for an ego point of view or probably because he cares about the money part. I don't know. He didn't sell much. He sold only $25 million stocks, and it's worth, it's worth like 200 million, right? More than 200 million. So probably it's very motivated. I think that's part of the bullish this.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know if I would like if they did an acquisition because who else is? I mean, they would be buying someone who's completely different.
Yeah, but what I will try to do is try to get the funded accounts, right? They will try to buy funded accounts in one shot from somebody else and then integrate them into their platform. And I think the integration should be nice. If they buy those company like they cannot buy IG or but something like that, that the platform is not that nice, and you just have the clients and the clients are active and things. Those clients will probably like eToro much better than the actual platform because they get all the benefit that comes with it: the banking part, the copy trading, the
Mm.
net, the network, blah blah blah. So I think it could work. Obviously, that would be a risk, and probably the market will price the risk, on the, by bidding the stock down. We don't know. Depends also how much they pay for it. You know.
I think it's interesting. It ticks most of the boxes. I'd have to figure out what's the volume of, let's say, of the categories and what's potentially they're making on each category, and sort of like stress test that.
Yeah, that we did. The only thing you cannot really know is how much they're making for each category. I mean, you can know what is the net contribution for each category. For
Yes.
example, there is a breakdown of how much they make 333 million, which is the graph that we saw before in the slides, right? The 333 million on the equity and the cryptocurrency side, 200 something on the crypto part, and then there is the eToro money and the subscription and blah blah blah. What is the beer thesis is that because the category of the crypto will shrink, and because that probably is the one that they make the most money, the margin will do it. But even by doing that, we don't understand why it would be worth less than, I don't know, $40, for example.
Yep. All right. Well, Antonio, thank you. So if someone wants to reach out to you, I see you have your moatinvesting.net,
Yes, and
with
realcventure.com.
realcventures.com. I'll post that in the notes. It'll also be
And
on.
on my of course, my LinkedIn as well, Antonio Velardo. Yeah, you can find me there and
Okay.
reach me out.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. The podcast episodes should not be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced in whole or in part without the prior written consent of the host. These recordings are for informational purposes only. This recording does not address all risks. The podcast is not intended to be relied upon as a forecast, research, or investment advice, and are not a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any securities or to adopt any investment strategy. The views and opinions of any podcast participants are subject to change and are not necessarily those of any companies affiliated or associated with the participants. The participants cannot guarantee the accuracy of the information in this podcast and has not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of such information or the assumptions on which such information is based. There is no guarantee that any forward-looking information will come to pass. Reliance upon information on this podcast is at the sole discretion of the reader and/or listener. Past performance is not indicative of current or future results. This podcast is being made available for educational purposes only and should not be used for any other purpose.